Hey, it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. We're focusing in on a very important topic, and that is really by popular demand, and that is to get more information and more in-depth discussion on the female psychopath. This is a very important group of individuals to understand because chances are at some point in your life you're going to find yourself encountering, or perhaps even a family member is exhibiting these qualities and traits, and it is responsible for causing much of the harm, destruction, and many of the other aftermath psychological disorders that present as a result of this very destructive personality disorder called psychopathy. And in the female psychopath, it's very important to be able to identify some of these characters and characteristics so that you can identify and perhaps piece the treatment and disorder together so you can ascertain what has happened and furthermore how to separate yourself and heal moving forward. The female psychopath is typified by psychopathy, meaning that this individual has, by virtue of their neurobiology, the neuroscience, their neural wiring in their brain, they have a highly sensitive dopamine reward system. So this means dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter which is responsible for the feeling of reward, of thrill, of exhilaration, of excitement. They experience a surge of dopamine. So this is what you feel in the initial love bombing phase with a psychopath, including a male psychopath. But this is kind of where you feel that elation, that exhilaration, that high, what they call the love bombing. And in the brain wiring of the female psychopath, they're highly sensitive, and they have an excess production of this dopamine neurotransmitter. So it makes them extremely thrill-seeking, extremely reward-seeking, extremely pleasure-seeking. So you see this in a lot of their behaviors, such as the promiscuity and highly sexualized and seductive nature. So these female psychopaths can be extremely seductive, go after men with highly seductive body language, talk, things of that nature. But not only is there this highly productive dopamine system, which is really 4 times more than the healthy or non-psychopathic individual, also the neural wiring is found to also contain a very low activity in the amygdala, which is responsible for empathy, which is responsible for bonding, which is responsible for connecting with you, with connecting with others. And this is almost as if this part of the brain is shut off or shut down. So this creates a very important part for you to understand of the psychopath, and that is their inability to love or bond with others. Period, end of story. When I say inability, I mean inability. It's not like it's very black and white. It's all or nothing, and the psychopath does not contain the ability to love or bond with others, including their children, including their mate, including their spouse, including their coworkers, including their neighbor, including everybody and anybody. So this creates this dynamic with a highly overproductive dopamine production system, and that which causes them to seek this thrill, coupled with the amygdala, the inactivity there, and also the prefrontal lobe, which also connects with morality and conscience, which basically would put the brakes on certain behaviors. They have no brakes in their vehicle. They have no stop. I mean, they have no conscience. So when I say conscience, your conscience is your set of right or wrong. When you say that would be wrong to do something to somebody, that is your conscience speaking up. When your sense of morality will basically dictate your behaviors through your thoughts, emotions. So this is lacking. This is completely a deficit in the female psychopath, in their neurochemistry. So this dopamine, which if it's not overstimulated, they tend to have a very suppressed amount of dopamine in their system, so which means they have a high propensity of boredom and an emptiness and a void, really kind of a black hole inside. So this makes them, this dopamine suppression in their system at their natural state, creates this feeling of empathy, lack of empathy, but emptiness and boredom, and kind of like they get very restless and need to do something, constantly on the go, to really release this feeling of boredom that they cannot really tolerate. They have a very low tolerance for this boredom. So then coupled with, a lack of serotonin in their brain, which is the neurotransmitter which is responsible for feeling content. So when you have a balanced amount of serotonin, you'll just feel content, easygoing, you'll feel healthy, you don't feel you need to go to the extremes. This is the responsibility of the neurotransmitter serotonin. So they have a suppression of the dopamine in their natural neurobiology. They have a suppression of the serotonin, the neurotransmitter responsible for a feeling of contentment. So they are then driven to go after this highly thrill-seeking behavior, which oftentimes takes the form of promiscuity and highly sexualized behavior. And when they target men who are in need of a relationship, they're the perfect target. Any man who is seeking a partner, who's been through a series of breakups, is on the rebound, someone who has, this kind of neediness about him, is a perfect target, because she can swoop in and satisfy that very well by being highly charismatic, very charming, very superficial, and very much violating of social norms in the form of highly promiscuous behavior. So violation of boundaries means, being seductive when it's not appropriate, seducing people in inappropriate places, public places, parking lots, offices, bathrooms, you name it. The female psychopath is going to really use a lot of this very sexualized body language when it's inappropriate and with inappropriate people. Children, family members, it's just really gross. And so, and that's a very technical term there, disgusting. So it's really very heinous because in the love bombing phase, they become, attracted to this person, then it's all the butterflies and you want to be with this person all the time. And, then, constantly texting, emailing, when are we going out again? And then this is when that idealization phase is being set up. But the female psychopath is either going to be the hot or cold. So they can either be very cold and callous, or they can be very hot, meaning very hot-tempered, very aggressive, very hostile, and then break out in fits of jealousy and rage and things like this. So they become very hot-tempered, very easily angered, easily agitated, and it's just like, whoa, where did this come from? It has nothing to do with you. When they lash out into a lot of these outbursts and escapades, a lot of people who are then around them tend to internalize this and feel like, oh my God, what did I do to set this person off? And then you're always trying to adapt and adjust to this pathological individual, and people's lives end up being destroyed by this confusion and by this lack of knowledge that you're in the presence of a female manipulative psychopath. And not all psychopaths are violent. So you see a lot of the men, men are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed and treated with psychopathy, because they really present with more like the aggression, the murderous, the criminals, etc. And the females oftentimes go undetected because they're, the intimate relationships is where it really pronounces. They can oftentimes have a very thick mask or facade, that makes them appear normal. Jobs, even marriages, families that are just a facade of normalcy. It's all a facade. The extent to which the facade runs is mind-boggling, and it makes most people just freak out. They're like, that's why it's so traumatizing when they expose this individual, because it's catastrophic in nature, and it impacts profound devastation for generations. If you have a psychopathic family member who has targeted you and on that hostility side, just, constantly berating, criticism, no emotional, you don't really feel an emotional bond with this person, even though they might give you gifts or give you attention. You can feel that there's no real connection. There's no bond. They might be, you might think it would be because they're a mother or a sister or, the woman you married, but there is no love. They do not have the ability to love or bond with others. In fact, oftentimes they perceive their children as a burden. I mean, and so oftentimes they'll end up pushing them away and alienating them because life would be so carefree if they didn't have the burden of their children around. And oftentimes then, when they then become bored with this newly found love interest, perhaps you were the victim of this, and then devalued and discarded by them because they became no longer bored and no longer thrilled and exhilarated with the dopamine high that you were giving them. Then the female psychopath will go in the devaluing and discarding phase, and this is where they can become very dangerous because, they react, especially if you leave them, to this lack of abandonment with you don't leave me, they become just very explosive, very hostile, and are very highly threatened by abandonment issues. So when, someone is leaving them, then it's like, even though it's over and even though they're no longer interested in the relationship, they tend to pursue it because you've just hit their grandiosity. You've just basically triggered that. And so they're going to continue to perhaps follow up with emails, scary texts, contacting your workplace, trying to do a smear campaign, damaging your physical property, trying to ruin your reputation. This is how they basically lash out, and they're very destructive. And if they can just blackmail you, they're feeling like they have won, and then they've retained their position of being the superior one, which is their craving. I mean, they need to be in power and control. That's just how they operate. And so if you've just, discarded the relationship or you've just left the relationship, they might, pursue in these very destructive and very heinous behaviors because they're all of a sudden on this dopamine high. They're on that reward high. And then, of course, they don't have that prefrontal cortex working with their morality. They don't have the amygdala working with their emotional empathy. So it's just like an emotional reward system. Like they're just, they're just like going for the destruction. And it's like a full on gas, without the brakes. Like they're just like a runaway train. A lot of psychopaths have described themselves like a runaway train. Like you can't keep your eyes off of them because it's just so catastrophic. Like you're just like, you're just like a deer with your, in the headlights. You're just like, I can't believe this is happening. And so it can be very traumatic and cause a lot of post-traumatic stress syndrome in the victims. So we're going to do more discussion on this because I've had a lot of requests for you to, understand more of the details. And we're also going to be going into more detail and specifics on how to handle these types of behaviors. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.